Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody who's listening in to us today. I'm very excited about the topic today because we're not going to talk about marketing as we always do. We might touch a little bit on that, but we're going to talk more about growth of companies, but also that type of a stable growth without actually burning out. So I'm very, very excited. And Cecilie, before we joined, she mentioned how she's prepared for it with a candle, with a view of her garden. This is perfect. I wish that more of us are able to do that more and more. Cecilie, welcome to the show today. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you, Laura. So happy to be here.
Very much fun. So Cecilie, could you share your founder story of how did you find today, what type of problems you're trying to solve, and in general, a background of yourself?
Yeah. So I'm the founder of Today. So we are a coaching company that specializes in founders' mental health, resilience, performance, and leadership building. I have a background in business psychology, and I've had an experience of being in larger corporates for almost 17 years. Building teams, leadership capabilities. And I ended kind of my corporate career in the more kind of corporate startup culture, building fintech products. So was part of building a fintech product here in Copenhagen, part of Mobile Pay, Mobile Life. It was called kind of digital mortgage products. So we built different products for within fintech for potential customers. And in that kind of process of getting an idea about something, creating the MVP, testing it in the market, getting it back, getting all this shitload back about it didn't work or there wasn't a market for it and so on. And then having to manage a team at the same time, and having to manage all the conflicts, all the pressure, all the kind of uncertainty, I kind of got really amazed how little focus there was on the mental side when we built new products and launch it or new science and launch it into the world. And I started looking into the data and could see that a lot of startups fail due to personal or interpersonal reasons. And I got really curious about that. And that's almost 7 years ago. And I started coaching founders in my spare time while also being head of growth in Mobile Life. And I could really see that there was a need for this. And so I took the jump and started Today.
Interesting.
So that's kind of the long story.
Was there a specific aha moment where you saw, okay, this could be a business?
I think kind of experiencing what founders gain from having these reflection rooms was an aha moment for me, and still is. And seeing that how we can help founders, preventing burnout, building more sustainable teams, building leadership skills, and then, creating something amazing in the world. That's just, a gift to be part of that journey, I think.
Very exciting. And when startups start growing, to start with, there's a group of people who gather together and they work on one problem solving. Pretty easy to start with because you don't have clients, you kind of try to make it. And most of the times these are good friends with different capabilities because then they can build on top of that. But when is the time in the company's story that those types of frictions start to happen, that they might need some additional help to figure out how are we going to grow?
I think in most startup companies, there's always a healthy friction between the product team and the marketing team, so the more commercial team. And that's, it doesn't matter if the product team is a scientific team, we work with a lot of scientists, or if it is a hardcore tech product team. I think there is a healthy friction there, and there should be a friction. I think what I see is that when people become overly stressed over a long period of time, that healthy friction can become an unhealthy friction.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's like what we know from science as well is that when we are overly stressed, one of the things we can see is that our empathy goes down. And that means our ability to connect with ourselves, our ability to connect with each other, our ability to connect with potential clients, customers, collaborators drops. And that is amazing, from nature. If you are being chased by a lion on the savannah, that you don't have empathy with that lion that is going to eat you. But it's not a really good thing when you are part of a team or when you're a founder and you're building something where empathy is required. Yeah. So that is where I see the friction is that, and also when founder teams, sometimes, I get board members that are contacting me because there are founders that have, conflicts in their team. And many, many times it is because they have been unable to solve them because they have, been under a very, very stressful time under a long period.
And in those situations, what is usually the key kind of trap to solve? Is that the ego? Is that an imposter syndrome? Why does that actually happen in general before we get into that unsolvable problem on top of that? But where do you see the usual kind of problems start to happen?
And are you talking problems kind of, conflicts in the teams? Or are you talking? Yeah. And is it conflicts in the larger teams or is it conflicts in the founder team?
Tell me both.
Yeah, okay. So I think very often one thing, as I said before, the trap is it's about, when you're overly stressed, that you're unable to solve these conflicts in a constructive manner. Because I just want to say that many conflicts are constructive. You need to have conflicts building something from scratch because it's where the tension is that we create something beautiful. Yeah. But apart from that, what I see is that when people come to me and talk about conflicts, very often founders come and say and tell me about things that I call are above the table. So that is problems about, we are misaligned on strategy. We're misaligned on how many hours we are going to work, who's going to take maternity or paternity leave, things like that. Yeah. How we are the company. We're misaligned on that. That's usually what's, above the table. The reason why they can't, resolve the conflict and the reason why the conflict becomes destructive, it's not because of the things that are over the table. It's because of the things that are under the table. And those things are the feelings, that is triggered by the misalignment. So that are the feelings about not being valued, not being heard, not being perceived as one wants to perceive, not being loved in some sort of way, not being respected, not being taken seriously. All these feelings that are triggered by the misalignment. So if we are to resolve a conflict, it's very much about putting words on what is it, which kind of feelings is it this triggers in me. That is the reason why we are unable to resolve the conflict.
And how would you unpack that? Because those are people with a lot of knowledge and a lot of pride over to what they have been building. So how do you practically go in and help the teams with this?
So I think first and foremost, it's about understanding, what is this conflict about? And that is saying, then if it's about misalignment, then I could ask again and again, okay, but, how does that make you feel that you're misaligned? What does that trigger in you? So I would really ask the founders or the team to put words on the feelings that is triggered by the conflict. And then that both party gets a chance to really put words on their feelings and in that respect create a mutual understanding of where both parties stand. Yeah, that is where I would start.
And is that something that they do as teams across each other, or is it something that they would work with you one-on-one?
So that would be something that they would do in their team, in their founder team, sitting with me and listening to each other's feelings and get an understanding. And I think the beautiful thing about conflicts and in life and if it's conflicts between people or founders is that we really have an opportunity to learn a lot about ourselves.
Exciting. Very exciting. You might not think that it is like, usually you might think that this is the like our family thing or relationship, but your work is a relationship too. For it to foster, then you have to have a very close alignment between each other.
And we bring our family situations into the work life.
Yeah.
It's not like when we walk into the startup that we kind of leave the code outside of being human beings.
Right.
So we walk into the startup that we want to create with the family background we have, with, the history we have of being in other relationships. And I think a good example of that I also give to my clients is, for example, at my home, me and my husband have a recurring conflict. And it's a very stupid one. And it's him not, agreeing on, for example, doing the laundry on a specific kind of day that we have agreed. And we can really have a conflict about this. And then you can say that's, what's above the table. It's really stupid. Why is there a conflict about that?
Yeah.
But the reason why there is a conflict is because it triggers something in me that comes from my childhood. And that is something about taking too much responsibility in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was brought up by a mother, an amazing mother, but she was unfortunately also an alcoholic. And I was forced to take too much responsibility in my life. And that I'm bringing that into my new relationship. Yeah, I'm bringing that into my company. I'm bringing that into all my relationships. It's about family history, and that's very often also what I see in conflicts between people and founder teams, is that we have this baggage with us.
And when some founders get together to begin with building a product, there's also another shift that also has to happen when, to begin with, they are doers. They build stuff. They build the solution. They build the marketing team and just doing all the time. But from there, then they're going to jump into leading the teams as well. What kind of tactics do you see working for founders to be able to start shifting the gears and to move over to leading teams rather than just doing? Because that's also a different mindset shift.
And I think, again, it's a really emotional journey many of them are experiencing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what many founders are experiencing in that shift is a lack of control. It's like giving your baby to somebody else, you're not the doer anymore. And you maybe have the feeling that you're probably the one that can do it best. Founders feel that. And then you give this baby that's your startup to somebody else. You just see them drop this baby once in a while because they have never done this before, That's the whole thing about delegating things that you have a long time and other people need to do for you. So I think, again, that triggers a lot of feelings for about, lack of control. And it's also a shift in identity as well. I had a founder once that told me, because we really worked on this shift. And when I work with founders on this shift, I have a practice where we kind of sit down and then we look at what is your key priorities as a founder leader, not as a doer, and then we code them. Yeah. So that could be getting resources to the companies, to fundraising. One could be securing that there's a high performing team. Another could be being the one that's out there and telling the story about the company. That is usually what a CEO founder should do, focus on. Yeah. And then we color code these three, say, okay, put those into your calendar, and everything that is not in that color code, somebody else should actually do. And then when they start this process of adjusting that, I had a founder there in my chair telling me that, says it's such a weird feeling because I don't feel like I'm doing anything. I don't feel there's a need for me anymore. It's like, because I've been so used to being in the ground, in the mud in a way, it down there in the cookie dough or what you say. So it's such a new feeling for them to kind of step a little bit back and look at their company, from the outside. And that's also what's required, because they need to also be able to have the long-term strategic perspective and so on.
Yeah. And that's a very interesting one, because going from a doer that you feel needed all the time because you literally don't have the time to be able to do even more, you're taking a step back and both are reflecting and seeing where does the company need help in order to grow. But in those types of high pressure situations, now your teams are taking over the doer situations. And how do founders then maintain that type of a bandwidth to not jump in, take a step back, but at the same time, help the teams as much as possible? Because it's a very different shift.
And it's super difficult.
Yeah.
It's super difficult. And I think there will also be, and the difficult part of it is there will always be a transition period for a founder where they don't have the luxury of only being the coach, If we look at the founder role a little bit like, playing football, then I would say that, you are either the coach or you're the football player.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are scaling a company, I think before you have really set your C-level team and your teams are in place, there will be periods where you are both the coach and also the player. And sometimes you need to jump between those roles before you can really become the coach and sit there and have the strategic overview only of your company. Yeah. And that is, I think, what is really, really difficult for many founders. It's because you have a long period where it's required that you do both. Also, if the shit hits the fan, then you are the one that needs to go maybe and solve it together with the team in a period of time. Yeah.
And in those types of situations, can you come with some practical examples what you have been working with some of the leaders to take that type of a step back to help out and observe the teams?
So I think the first one is, for example, the color coding. So it's a practical exercise to kind of say, okay, this is your company's strategy for the next year to 1 year to 3 years. What does that require of you as a founder or as a CEO or CSO? What is required? What do you need to succeed with? And what are the types of kind of main areas you need to succeed in order to make the company succeed? And then we would begin to kind of look at that and color code those key priorities. And then the rest, we would look at, okay, who could you then delegate these responsibilities to? And what would it require of them to these people that you delegate to? What would it require that they really perform well in that role? How can you enable their performance in that role? Because sometimes what I see that founders do is that kind of they delegate and then they do a mic drop. Yeah, because then it's your responsibility. So it's also the understanding of that there will be a period of time where you would have to coach or help or support or be there on the sideline in order to make somebody perform in the role you have had before.
Who's following that type of a process? It does, absolutely. Who has to follow that type of process? Is that the founder themselves, or do they usually get some help in order to say, are we on the right path?
So that process would be the founder. It could be the CEO. It could be the CTO, the CSO. It could be anybody actually that needs to shift in their role. So kind of what is your new role about? And I would always say it needs to be linked to the strategy you want to execute. And what are the tasks you have now, and who should you delegate those to?
Yeah.
So that's more.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. So that's kind of the very practical part, you can say. Yeah.
Yeah. And would you normally work with a couple of founders or just choose one in the company who would need to do that type of a strategy shift?
It depends on who would need to do it. Yeah. If they come to me and say that I need to grow into another role than I have now, then it would be one-to-one coaching. So is the question that if it's a one-to-one coaching session or if it's a founder coaching session?
Yeah, or do you usually involve all of the founders in those types of sessions? Does it have to be everyone?
No, it could also
Like
be
an
one-to-one.
intervention?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it could also be one-to-one, kind of. Usually it is a one-to-one coaching session where the founder is coming to me because he or she wants to grow more into the leadership role. So it's also about, double clicking on what does that mean? What is your new leadership role? What does it entail? Where do you need to succeed? And also, how do you lead? How do you make other people perform? How do you create results through other people instead of doing it yourself?
Mm-hmm. And in your team, when you work with founders, so what are the core offerings that you work with the teams with?
So we do one-to-one coaching sessions around. It could be if a founder is burning out or have stress symptoms or want to optimize performance, or, for example, want to grow more into the leadership role. And sometimes it's all of those things together. So we do one-to-one coaching. Then we do team coaching sessions. So that could also be these founder conflict sessions, for example. So it's more like couples therapy we do there. Then we do different kinds of workshops. So workshops for the larger startup team around resilience, around high-performing teams. We do workshops also for leadership teams, startup leadership teams. And then what we do a lot, we have a product called Founder Circles, and that is peer-to-peer learning/therapy groups for founders across portfolio companies. So that is founders that are in similar roles or are in a similar kind of growth in their company that meet once a month over a year in this group. Yeah.
Got it. And now we're on a SaaS podcast. ROI and impact is the name of the game. How do you measure the impact that you're seeing? Do you measure ROI? How do you define what you're going to reach? And then how do you measure the end result?
Yeah. So we measure our impact, for example, in the Circle program, we are quite data-driven. So we measure the impact in the end of the Circle program. So after that year, it's very simple. We send out a survey where the founders can kind of say from a scale from 1 to 5, how much do they think that the Circle work and being part of a Circle have influenced their ability to focus as a leader, where you look at focus, at the ability to progress. We look at resilience, and we look at leadership capabilities and performance in overall. So that is some of the key indicators we look at after a Circle program.
And how long time does it usually take?
A Circle program?
In general, to start seeing results, what does it depend on?
It depends very much, I think, there are many things, but I think it depends on the results within, if we're talking about burnout, for example, we want to see results quite quickly, yeah? But we don't want to have a person coming to us. So the first thing we do when a person comes that have severe stress symptoms or burnout, for example, is that we have one priority, and that is to get them. Mm-hmm. So that is something that we really want to work on very quickly, to start to work with the founder of doing things in a different way so the symptoms come down. So in that way, we are supposed to see results very quickly. Sometimes if it's about leadership or performance and so on, then it's also about the coachability of the founder. It's also about the motivation of the founder, mm-hmm. I think, as well. And the ability to work with yourself. And in that way, I'm meaning that your ability to look inward and also self-reflect and be mm-hmm. open for other perspectives. I think that's some of the key elements that enables personal growth.
And are there any tangible advice that founders have to focus on nowadays in these stressful situations that you think are very easily actionable, and then they could adapt even tomorrow?
I think I really hate that question, because I think that's a question where we also look at mental health. I think, you can ask ChatGPT about that. You can get a lot of answers about, how you should sleep. You can get an Oura ring. You can get, measure this and this, and how you optimize what you eat, how much water you drink, if you meditate, and so on, and exercise. Important things, that's kind of the foundation of functioning as a human person.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we forget in our individualistic society is that resilience is created between human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if I should get one very concrete advice for founders in regards to their mental health, is continue to foster meaningful relationships to you. Use time on the people that matter.
And is that inside of your teams or in general, to be a good founder, you have to have some meaningful relationships during your life?
It's not inside of your teams, it's outside of your company.
Uh-huh.
See your family, see your friends, see the people you love that love you as a person, that has nothing to do with you as a founder.
Yeah.
Use time on that. That creates resilience.
Yeah.
And we can also see, I wrote a book about this, and and one of the people I interview in the book is actually a woman from New York, a kick-ass founder. She has created the Maven Clinic, kind of a huge digital clinic called Kate. And Kate, one of the things that Kate really has done is that she has used time on building meaningful relationships while she has built this billion-dollar company.
Mm-hmm.
And every time shit has hit the fan, she has pulled the plug and she had spent time with people that supports her and people that are meaningful to her and people that has nothing to do with her being a founder.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And usually that's where both your creativity comes back without just running after the same goal and kind of
exactly
getting the time would give you more of that. Yeah, absolutely. Exciting.
So I think that's really, it's a little bit linked to, when you are a founder and you're building something from scratch, you have a tendency of becoming what you built.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a tendency, or it can be not only a founder, it can also be an athlete or a person that creates films or an artist, a person that is passionate about what they do, or a scientist. They will experience that they will merge with the things they create at some point. So they will become that. And it's okay to become what you create identity-wise, but you need to be mindful that you kind of are not that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit like, have you seen this? I love this movie called Inside Out by Pixar. Have you seen it? Yeah. So it's about this girl called Riley, and we are into Riley's brain and all her emotions. And Riley has these identity islands, yeah? So she has this hockey island, she has a family island, she has a silly island with her friends, and a school island. And then Riley moves to another city, I think it is, to San Francisco from Canada. And her identity island breaks down and she becomes very sad and depressed, and she has to build these identity islands again. And it's a little bit the same with founders. You want to build a company that you only focus on one identity island, and that is being the founder and the company. And all the other identity islands just, disappears. And that's being not resilient. Because if that fails, you fail as a person, not as a founder, but as a person, and you don't have the other identity islands that can help and support you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So resilience as a founder is to have mutual identity islands to stand on.
Exciting. Yeah. Is there an assessment question or something that a founder has to think about I don't know, weekly or monthly, think, am I on the right path? Do I have enough bandwidth for the company that I built with? So that they kind of build in that type of breathing time and take a step back from the company. Is there something specific that they should think about regularly?
I think that many founders have, can have benefit a lot from journaling. I interviewed Jesper Theil, who did Soundbox, and he explained me about his journal practice, and that he tries to sit every morning, and I think he asks himself 2 questions. One of them is, what do I really want to get out of the day? Mm-hmm. So what's important for me, and what am I grateful for? So I think, you can ask different questions. It could also, many different questions when you do the journaling exercise in the morning that founders could do, just as inspiration.
Are there other inspirational books or podcasts that you usually recommend people to get into if they're interested in the topic?
I think they should, of course, read my book when it's out in English. If they're English speaking, right now it's out in Danish, called Build Without Burnout. It will be launched in English the next year. But apart from that, of course, I think there are many different podcasts out there, but my favorite podcast is called Reboot. Mm-hmm. So it's a podcast by an amazing guy called Jerry Colonna. He's a coach, and is a former investor and have been working with founders for many, many years. And he's also Buddhist. Mm-hmm. And I really like his way of working with founders and viewing the world. And so I would recommend that.
Nice. Great. Thank you very much, Cecilie. And I recommend everybody to get the book as soon as it's out in English, or get the Danish one if you're listening from Denmark as well. It's a very interesting topic, and it could go endlessly, not just into the founders, but in general for every high-performing individual in startups and fast-moving companies. Journaling is something that people should do much more often to take a step back as well. Mm-hmm. I really like the conversation, Cecilie. Is there anything else that you would like to add that we did not discuss today before we close off?
No, I think I'm fine. It was great talking. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, everyone. And catch us on the Attributed Podcast. Thank you, Cecilie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.